Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I hope you're enjoying this video series on the historical criticism of early Islam. The last couple of videos, we talked about the pilgrimage and we talked about some of these rituals, and I think we proved without a shadow of a doubt that almost every single step was borrowed from somewhere, and there is idolatry involved also almost at every step along the way. But today we're going to really put it all together and conclude things about Mecca. So that's why we call this the 6 conclusions about Mecca. And with me here is our dear brother, Dr. J. Dr. J, what do you mean by the 6 conclusions concerning Mecca?
Well, let's go ahead and what I want to do is unpack what we have looked at, bring it together, make sense of it so that we can move on then to the Quran. So let's go ahead and go to our slide again, and you can see there the 6 conclusions. What was the first thing that we looked at? Well, we looked at the whole problem of geography, and we noticed within this also would be the prophets in geography, the whole vegetation, the enormous amount of reference after reference in both the Quran and also the tradition of a place that is in a valley. It's not in a valley that has streams going through it. There are no streams going through Mecca. There are no streams anywhere near Mecca. It has fruit, it has clay, it has loam, it has olive trees. There are no olive trees anywhere that far south. They're all up in the Mediterranean world. And then it refers 23 times to these people from Ud. Well, Ud is Uz in the Bible. Where is Ud? It's way up in Nabatea. It's up near Petra. It talked 24 times about these people from Thamud. That is Nabateans. The Thamudians are the Nabateans, as we know it in the Bible. That's all around Jordan, 600 miles further north. And then 7 times it refers to these people from Midian that this prophet has contact with, daily contact with. You can't have daily contact with people that are 600 miles further north. Obviously, there's something wrong. That the geography that's in the Quran just does not make sense. And so Gibson brought this up, and he wrote a book on this, Quranic Geography. You can get it. You can buy it for $15 and PDF. You go up online and just put the Quranic Geography PDF and pay your $15 to get it. Read it. We then went into the maps, and this is the material that was brought up by Dr. Patricia Corona, who reads and writes 15 languages, and she did a whole study in Hagarism and then Meccan trade and the rise of Islam in 1987 when it was published, and she looked at these maps, and we showed map after map after map, which tried to cartograph what Ptolemy had said in the 2nd century. They put into map form in the 1400s, 1500s, and 1600s. And we showed that every one of these maps, there was one glaring thing that was missing, and that was Mecca. It was not on any of these maps. Ptolemy knew nothing about Mecca. So then we went and we talked about the Qibla, and we referred to Gibson's material again, his research on all these mosques that were built as far away as Guangzhou in China and Sherman in India. And you have mosques that are built in Turkey and in Jordan and in Syria and especially in Israel. And they're all facing possibly Petra. And this is why there is a debate going on right now whether it's Petra or Jerusalem. I'm almost going with the Jerusalem. I think these are all facing Jerusalem, not Petra. They're so close together. There's just 100 miles between those two cities.
But either way, I mean, it's damaging anyway.
Either way, they're not facing Mecca. That's the important thing. It's enormously damaging because Dr. David King, who is the world authority, disagreed with Gibson on this, and yet he could not come up with any response. We did a whole series, you and I, just shutting down and debunking David King, the man who had spent his whole life researching this and only went to one mosque to even look at it physically, did all the rest of his research in the libraries, reading 10th, 11th, and 12th medieval scholars who didn't themselves admitted they didn't know why these mosques the Qiblas were all hulta-pulta all over the place. He thought there were thousands of directions. Really, there's only 4 directions. And Gibson is the one that has solidified that, and we thank God for what Gibson has done. So we looked into that. But then we went into Patricia Crone's debunking of Montgomery Watt's trade route theory, the land route. You have to find some type of importance for Mecca. For it to be that important, for it to have that type of monopoly, there needs to be something that was there to give it that monopoly. And what Montgomery Watt said it had to do with the trade. The trade is what gave it its monopoly. And he said because of the shutdown of the Persian Gulf, the warring that was happening between the Sassanians and the Byzantines, they had to redirect the trade down to Aden, up to Najran, through Sana, then to Najran, and then to Taif, down to Mecca, up to then Yathrib to Tabuk, Khaybar, and then on up to Gaza in the north. That was that 1,250-mile trade route. And, of course, Montgomery Walk said that's why it was important. Patricia Crone comes around, looked at a map, says, you've got a problem. You have a detour to get down to Mecca. If you're up on a plateau, the Western Plateau, you have to go 3,000 feet down to get to Mecca, then come 3,000 feet back up again to get to Yathrib. From Taif down 3,000 feet, and then up 3,000 to Yathrib. That doesn't make sense, especially if you've got a city that has no water and has no vegetation. If there's no water, there are no people. If there's no vegetation, there are no people. If there are no people, there are no towns, there are no cities. There are no cities, there are no civilizations, there's no history. And with one fell swoop, she eradicated.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense to have camels basically walking on rocks. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, why not on the plains of the desert? I mean,
of the desert that are up above the plateau. So that makes sense. And we show those topographical maps. Remember them? We show exactly, look at visually, see how far down Mecca is. Today, there's super highways that take you up and down. You don't even notice it. But not when there were camels. It would be a huge, arduous journey to go all the way down, all through the rocks, and then come all the way back up for no reason. There's nothing there. There's no history there. So we looked at the civilizations, and remember, we looked at all those civilizations that were all surrounding all over. Not one of these people in these civilizations heard about this place called Mecca. Yet they were all in the east and the west and the north and the south, almost a circle all around Mecca. None of them had heard of this place, and yet they were right next door. They were their neighbors. So that was curious. But Patricia Crone didn't go far enough. Remember, she said that the trade went up the Red Sea. That was the answer. It didn't go up the land route for a very good reason. If you have a sea lane there, it's so much cheaper to remain on sea. That made sense. So she showed, and she said it went up the Red Sea, but she didn't realize what part of the Red Sea. So we did our own research, the Sin Sifters, and we came up and realized that if you look at the channels, the ancient channels of where the boats went, you can see the map right there, those golden lines, that is where the old boats went. Not the red one, that's where the super tankers go today. The old ones that were pushed by wind, the sails and whatnot, they were on the left side. None of the channels are on the right side. Why are all the channels on the left side? Why would you say?
Well, it appears that on the left side, there is more habitation, civilization, things that.
And why is there more habitation and civilization?
I'm sure there is water and other things.
It all comes down to water. One simple word. Water. You got to have water. Why is it you have all the great civilizations in Mesopotamia? Mesopotamia means between the two rivers. Mm-hmm. That's why all the great civilizations.
The
Fertile Crescent. What makes it fertile? Water. Right. You have to have water. Where there is water, there is people. There is no water on the eastern side, on the eastern coast. If there's no water, there are no cities. If there's no cities, there are no people. If there are no people, there's no civilization. If there's no civilization, there's no Mecca. And so we threw out Mecca just by simply looking at maps and looking at history. And we looked at the 5 different cities along the western coast, starting with Agilis, coming all the way up through 2 in Eritrea, 1 in Sudan, and 2 in Egypt. And they're right there 1 day sailing distance from each other. That proved that this has been going on since the 3rd century BC. Mm-hmm. Nothing on the east coast showing that Mecca no longer was important. And then we ended off with the stages. Actually, there's 5 or 6 stages. Gibson said 5. I would say there's a 6th one, and you brought the 6th one up, and that's the sacrifice. We need to bring the sacrifice into that narrative, because the sacrifice is almost as important. If you want to look and see where the antecedent to the sacrifice is, that's Abraham. You need to go to Judaism again. You need to go to Mount Moriah. You need to go to Jerusalem, because Mount Moriah is in Jerusalem. That's where the Temple Mount is, and that's where Abraham supposedly sacrificed. That's what most people think, that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, not Ishmael. There is a huge talking point on that. But what really got me excited was the black stone, and where you admitted that you used to go that circumambulation 7 times, and you would make a 0 into that black stone so you could kiss it, so you could get your sins absolved. What in the world is that doing at the very center of Islam? Idolatry is endemic to Islam. Yet Islam's whole statement of faith is against idolatry. Everything you hear Muslims say when they're attacking Jesus Christ, and they believe we're idolatrous for creating a man into a god. They believe we've done that. Look and see what they've done with the black stone. They have made one of the most idolatrous symbol of mankind, a rock, actually 8 little stones, as a place to get your sins forgiven. And all the pilgrims want to go and kiss it. It's still there today. They have to keep it there today because they have no other recourse. It's been there from the very beginning where the Kaaba was first built. So these are, if you look at every one of these, what you notice, conclusion, that though Mecca has existed, according to Islam, according to the standard Islamic narrative, from the time of Adam and Eve, we see that in chapter 7, verse 24, there is absolutely no evidence of it anywhere until 741. The city itself, there's no reference to it. It's not on any map. Actually, the first reference is 741. The first time it is even shown on a map is not till 900 AD. That's the 10th century. And everything we now find in Mecca, we could previously find in Petra, and even before Petra, Jerusalem. It all traces its lineage back to Jerusalem, proving once again that all they have done is created nothing more than a Disneyland in the desert. A facsimile of different traditions that have been borrowed mainly from Jerusalem, mainly from the Jews, and recreated it in a facsimile form and a much more shut down form. Totally illogical when you look and see where they put the 2 rocks or the 2 mountains right next to the Kaaba, where they put the Zamzam well right next to the Kaaba. These have to be miles away out in the desert, but they have to put them there so that they can do the rituals there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I guess all we can say is that everything we have covered so far showed its origin somewhere else. Whether it's borrowed, whether it's invented sometimes, or whether it is basically manipulated or even twisted, the story itself. All of that means that Islam is not original in any way. All it did, it just took parts and pieces from other places and just put it all together. That's why we're doing this for you. We're putting it all together to show you that that's what it's all about. Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.